Chapter 41. Poof. The woman who was putting down my dessert laughed at my clean dishes without any sign of eating. It was such a small sound that only my ears could hear. The eyes met. Her eyes were full of ridicule, as if she were dying of joy. Oh, Hora, let's try it, shall we? I quickly dropped the smallest spoon on the floor before she left. Dalalang. Marbles and iron bumps into each other and makes quite a lot of noise. Naturally, everyone in the dining room looked at me. Oh, sorry, my hand slipped. Speechless, will you pick it up and take it? I gave the floor a big wink of apology. Mrs. Donna was also nonchalant about my unexpected behavior. She looked very familiar, as if she couldn't do anything about it. Sure, don't worry about it, lady. If it were Penelope, would he have thrown a spoon over Mrs. Donna's head and already got up? No, I asserted myself. The old woman, whom I learned from the butler's words, has been a regular participant in the meal of the Duke for an uninvited seat. In other words, no one else has dealt with her except on a time like this. It's a family dinner where she only left out while a pleasant conversations are exchanged. It is a position where she forced herself to sit in while enduring alienation and misery. However, if the Duke did not like the dishware, he would never have tried to share it with her again. Penelope knew this well, therefore she would have endured hunger and anger desperately. If she couldn't even participate in this event, she'd never run into this family. But not me. I looked down at Mrs. Donna, whose face was so expressionless that I was embarrassed by her fuss, and dadalang. Oh my god, sorry, I slipped again. The second smallest spoon fell in front of Mrs. Donna, who was just getting up with the spoon I had dropped. The attention of the humans who were drawing attentions was drawn back to me. The Duke kicked his tongue disapprovingly. What are you doing? I'm sorry, the pudding is so soft that the spoon keeps going off. I replied with a shrug. Derek's cold blue eyes fixed on me. Leonard was no different. It's all right, lady. Mrs. Donna also picked up the second spoon that fell beside her without complaint. Well, have a good time. It was the moment when she was raising herself in greeting. Dalalang, lang, lang. I threw the last spoon right in the floor. Penelope echoed. The Duke's face and voice froze in an instant. Huh? What are you doing? Leonard laughed as if he was dumbfounded, and Derek glared at me with a frown on his face. The white letters on their heads began to flicker. I got up from my seat, dragging my chair noisily. I'm afraid I can't eat dessert because I don't have any more spoons. Sit down. If you're finished with what you want to say, I'm thinking of going up to my room. The Duke's face was gradually filled with anger. What's the point of doing this at a luncheon after a long time? I'm so hungry, father. I overpowered my stomach. My unexpected words wriggled the eyes of the Duke and the sons. What? I'm not as good at using tableware as I am 3 years old, so I can't eat a bite of these foods. As if I were a real child, I looked at my face with a gloomy look. The untouched food had not cooled yet. If I go up to the room as it is, it will be all up to the employees. Stupid Penelope would starve his people to death every time. Right, Mum? I smiled innocently and asked Mrs. Donna for her consent. Oh, lady, her face went black and white in a moment. It was funny that the previous confidence and ridicule disappeared from nowhere. A cool silence fell on the dining room. Main dish with no small toy utensils, and no signs of touching. The white plate without a single sauce was so clean that it was hard to do so without complaining about the seat. I now knew well without having to see where everyone's eyes were. I'm going to go up and ask Emily to get me a sandwich so I can eat it with my hands. Speechless. Have a good time, father, brothers. No one held me this time. As I opened the closed door and left the dining room on my own, I suddenly burst out laughing. I threatened everyone I'd shoot them with a crossbow. Yes, I'd say yes. Isn't it really funny? Such a wicked woman was being held captive because she couldn't do such a thing. But nevertheless, I was not the only one who could laugh at such Penelope. I feel so sorry for her who sat there till the end enduring hunger. For pity's sake, coming straight up to the room, I took out the book I was reading from the bookshelf and sat down at my desk. I confidently left the dining room saying I was hungry, but I wasn't that hungry. Rather, I was honestly worried that it would affect me main lead's favorability after I came out of the mess. At the end, there was no change. I was worried that I couldn't check their faces properly because I was paying attention to the Duke and Mrs. Donna. You're not going to lose your favor if you throw your spoon in a rude way. I thought so, but soon I decided to take it easy. Well, if you're a little far away, that's not much. It may be a relief, but it didn't matter how much change was made because they were X-rated anyway, as long as it's not a deathly plunge. I tried so hard to focus on the contents of the book. It was that moment. Knock knock. I heard someone identify herself. Lady, it's me. Come in. Emily gladly allowed herself in. Opening the door, she carefully stepped inside, holding a lidded tray. Are you reading? What's that? As I asked, As I asked with a glare, she put down the tray she had brought on the desk and opened the lid. Steamed soup, steaks, and sandwiches were neatly laid out. I immediately frowned. This is because the steaks plate was the same plating as the one at the dinner. It's a new one because the Duke ordered it, lady. Maybe she heard the whole story, but Emily slowly took a look at me and added, "And this is what the butler told me to bring you, a small brown bottle of digestive medicine. No thanks, I don't want to eat much, so take it out." Fortunately, or unfortunately, I had nothing to eat, so I had nothing to upset my stomach. Emily cried when I told her to take it back. "I heard you wanted to have sandwiches. You're hungry. Hurry up and eat, lady." "It's okay, I ate earlier. You haven't had a proper meal all day, so just a little bit." "No, not just today. It's always been." I threw down the book and grazed my brain irritably. "Was there any food you brought that could be called a proper aristocratic meal?" "Oh, lady." Emily was what at a loss what to do with my cold look. I knew it was a useless vent. Emily has been good enough to me as long as I can. It is not that I was very dissatisfied with the meal, which had only one or two dishes and desserts. I never starving. But still, in my situation, no, this situation and background facing Penelope was irritating and driving me crazy. "Stop carrying that and go out. I don't really want to see your face right now." Emily eventually took the tray back with a somber face. I thought I was too much for someone who took care of me because I was worried, but I didn't feel very sorry. From the moment I left the dining room, I opened the book again, pressing down on my rising emotions, but soon after I threw it back down as if I had thrown it back. I'm annoyed. Standing up in front of my desk, I went to bed and lay down. A luxurious antique room ceiling was visible. The owner of the room couldn't even get a proper meal, but it was funny because it seemed to be wrapped up in a plausible way. Why should I come all this way and go through this shit? I couldn't understand it at all, so I muttered to myself. If someone other than me was possessed by this king, I might be happy to see such a spacious and lavishly decorated room, but I wasn't particularly impressed with these things. It is because the place where I stayed at my parents' house was also luxurious and spacious enough to live in. But ironically, living in such a fancy room, I was worried about eating the next day. After the second son of a bitch graduated, bullying at school reached its peak. It was basic to keep getting caught in line and eat the last meal of the day, and it was usual to deliberately hit the shoulders and make them spill the plate. Even if I starved all day and went home, I couldn't eat right away, except for me. They did attend a nice family meal. Where is his pride? Now that we have succeeded in escaping, it was truly foolish. I should have had enough food to last. Unlike Penelope, who has a maid, I didn't have anyone to feed me. She used to leave work right after finishing the dishes. I held my stomach tightly and went to the kitchen only when the men of the house finished their meal and went into their respective rooms. Then I put rice on a cold soup or poured the leftover side dishes into a large spoon and rubbed them to eat them. However, I often spits it out without a bite more than when I can eat it whole. Wow, the rest of the soup or side dishes tasted terrible, mixing vinegar, sugar, salt, salted fish, and sometimes unknown things. It was the second son of a bitch, a beggar. "So why are you sneaking around like a rat?" He sometimes hid and watched me like that, and then giggled out and sarcastically. And so I had to suffer from malnutrition and chronic gastritis until I escaped from that damned place. End of chapter 41. Chapter 42. I was really like a beggar. I was really like a beggar. Looking back on the past, I smiled weakly. I thought maybe it was much better to be a fake princess now, which I thought was no better than me. That's enough. It's nothing more than past. I jumped out of bed. At times like this, I had to move my body. Staying still will only erode you into gloomy thoughts. I took out a shawl and went out of the room. I was going to take a walk. I was just going down the stairs across the hall. "Lady," I happened to run into the butler who was coming down from upstairs. He asked with astonishment, "Where are you going?" "Outside the house." "You're going to East Hill to see the fireworks?" "East Hill?" As I asked back, I immediately remembered where it was. Not long ago, it was a small hill where I was taken by Derek and came down alone. Penelope must have been out to watch fireworks on the last day of the festival every year. I found out why the Duke asked such a question at the dining room. No, I shook my head straight away. I wasn't romantic enough to go all the way there just to see fireworks. "What are you doing this time?" "I'm bored." The butler put on an awkward face. It may be quite embarrassing to see a kid who had been going steady until last year suddenly change her attitude, but it didn't matter. A wicked woman is bound to boil with whims. To celebrate the victory, the finale of this festival will be much bigger than last year. Fireworks will be everywhere. I don't know why the butler is holding me back and telling me this story. It was very uncomfortable to face him because he was also at the luncheon earlier. Good luck, then. I brushed right past him. "Lady Penelope." But I couldn't go down the stairs because of the urgent voice that held me. "Why?" Down a notch, I stopped and looked back at him. The old butler hesitated for a while and managed to open his mouth. I'm on my way back from organizing the attic under the direction of the Duke. Speechless, I'm on my way to deliver it to you. To me? I wondered why the butler told me that. The passage to the attic was at the end of the corridor on the third floor, so I've never been there. Why? Don't you often go up when you're young? When you first came to the dukedom, you saw fireworks in the attic. Speechless. The Duke probably told me to clean up the attic because he remembered it. You have to say what you want to say right away, butler. I cut off him coldly. With a sarcasm, burst into laughter. I've been in a position where I couldn't go up even though I wanted to, thanks to someone who felt uncomfortable for me climbing up there often. The third floor was closed, and I couldn't get near the attic. Speechless, his mouth shut. I wouldn't have been this aggressive if I were normal. The butler happened to have a bad time. It was because he caught me, who was on my way to calm down my anger, because of the strangely overlapping situation with the past. My sharp point carved deep wrinkles on the butler's forehead. Mrs. Donna was fired immediately, miss. He carefully opened his mouth again with a darkened look. The Duke was so angry that she was kicked out naked without a penny of severance pay. Speechless, there was no more punishment for this woman who had been a duchess for a long time, and who was a fallen family, but who had enemies in her own writer. I opened my eyes wide at the unexpected news. Looking at the butler with a puzzled look, he calmly continued, but Master Derek has come forward and burned his employment contracts and letters of recommendation, so she won't be able to find a job in the aristocracy. So do I owe you a toast? I blinked and asked back in a cold tone. I was a little it was a little surprising, but it wasn't exactly a pleasant story. Why didn't you take any action last time to solve a problem that can be solved right away? What's with the measures? I would read I would read about how long Emily had worked and threaten her to leave quietly. When I recalled Derek at that time, I felt even more apathetic. You don't have to give me all that stuff. It's not my responsibility anyway. The Duke was heartbroken by the day. He seemed to keep worrying about your skipping meals. So what do you want me to do? Pressing down the words that filled my throat, I forced up the corners of my mouth. If I go down to the dining room and eat now, will my father feel better? Princess, it was then. It's all my fault today. The butler suddenly bowed deeply in front of me. I opened my eyes wide. My biggest fault is that I haven't been able to faithfully support you under the pretext of being busy. If you punish me separately, I'll take it sweetly. Speechless. By the way, my lady, could you please accept the Duke's sincerity? I looked at the butler with a strident glance, bowing before me. After leaving the dining room like that, the Duke thought a lot of about how to get rid of your hurt feelings. Then he came up with what you liked when you were young. You know, it's a very rare to withdraw an order once you've given us. What the butler said was true. It has already been 6 years since he locked up all the doors on the third floor and banned her from entering due to a small commotion that took place shortly after she was adopted. But now that you want to withdraw it, it must have been shocking in many ways to see your abused foster daughter who showed you her broken heart. The butler, wait on it. But now that you want to withdraw it, it must have been shocking in many ways to see your abused foster daughter who showed you her broken heart. The butler stooped more closely, seeing me thoughtless and silent, thinking that there was hope. The old man opened the third floor, which was closed himself, and arranged the attic with all his heart. So let's get out of here, lady. Speechless, I looked at the butler with a dull face without an answer. If it was really Penelope who was here now, not me, she would have been so happy. One of the humans who led the bullying was fired, and the family's attention was drawn. How satisfying would the situation be for for the deacon, whom I have always felt sorry for, to nod his head to me. But it's late. I wasn't Penelope. Why didn't you do this for her at least once before I came into this body? If so, this stupid, pathetic little girl would have forgiven everything and liked me. It's too late. At the moment, the butler's pupils, which found my face distorted in a mess, expanded greatly. Oh, lady. When the embarrassed man raised his back completely. Yes, how can I ignore my father's sincerity? I had a quick look on my face. I was just on my way out for a walk, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to go there after a long time. When he looked like he was going to cry, I went back to my arrogant Penelope and said, take me to the attic. It did not seem to have fully opened the third floor. Crossing the hallway, a large two-door was tightly locked with a chain wrapped around it. That's the lady's room, isn't it? Penelope's room was pretty good, but the female lead's room was different from the size of the door. It wasn't offensive or upsetting. How can a real daughter and an adopted daughter be treated the same way? You need to know your place. As I passed in front of it, the butler looked at me with a particularly. Of course, I didn't show anything. When I opened the small door at the end of the corridor on the third floor, a spiral stone staircase came out. It seemed to be a turret built in preparation for the invasion. but it was poorly managed compared to other places, perhaps because it had not been used for a long time. Be careful with the high stairs, lady. The butler went up first and warned me. I grabbed my skirt and carefully climbed the stairs. The attic at the top of an old narrow stone tower. It's definitely a secret place for kids to like. I climbed spiral stairs with no end in sight. After a long time, the stairs broke as if they had finally reached the end, and an old door came out. The butler opened it up with with familiarity and went inside. After that, I honestly didn't have much expectation. Even the attic was made by roughly removing the place used as a warehouse. Oh, but the place I entered was surprisingly good, like a small study. On one side of the attic was filled with books, and on the other was a cozy couch and a fireplace. There was a large round window in the middle of the window. Through an open window gap, a cool breeze came in and tickled the bridge of the nose. Do you like it, my lady? The butler asked me with a satisfied face. When I looked around, I answered mildly, This is good. May I bring you some refreshments? No thanks, I'd rather stay here till in the evening. Of course you can. The Duke has already allowed us to spend as much as we want. I liked it, feeling a little better. I spoke in a softer voice. Thanks for your guidance, butler. Don't mention it. Then make yourself comfortable, lady. The butler bowed to me and went down to the attic. I walked slowly inside, looking around the quiet interior once again. Penelope deserved to go up a lot. Comfortable, desolate. She was just adopted as a Duke daughter and was perfect for a hated child to hide without knowing the reason. I arrived in front of a large open window. Then I glanced out. The site of the Duke was very large, therefore the city streets were not as visible as when I followed Derek on the hill a while ago. Instead, it was good to see the endless sky and scenery as there were no buildings high enough to block the view. I left a couch covered with blankets and flopped down on the bare floor in front of the window frame. The sun was setting outside the window. It was when I was staring blankly beyond the horizon, where the red sunset was overflowing. Dull cock. Suddenly, I heard something behind my back. What? End of chapter 42. Chapter 43. Someone with the pink hair just opened the door coming in and met my eyes. Why are you here? After finding out that it was me, Leonard stopped making a gesture and frowned. First, do you think I'm happy to see you? I glanced over his head and answered back calmly. I'm here because the butler showed me around. I'm not talking about that. Reynold glanced up and down at me, then laughed. You're off the third floor, aren't you? Oh my god, who's the reason keeping me out? Out of nowhere, I snapped at him with a coy smile. The entry ban has been lifted from today. My father gave me permission. Oh, that's why he suddenly asked me about the attic I didn't use. So why are you here? I'm not off limits like some idiot. He walked in sarcastically. The figure was frowned upon. I didn't want to be disturbed alone by an unwelcome, uninvited guest. I was irritated to death. I came first. So I was telling you to stay away from my seat. But he was not a man who listened to. Who said something? Reynald came into the attic without any distance and lay down on a fluffy couch and stared at me with languid, downcast eyes. You're sitting on the ground there. That's a perfect seat for you. Why do you want to stay here, not in your room? It's because the second master of this house wanted to. Oh man, just. The first trembled. I wanted to put flowers in the face of a mean fellow, but I held it back desperately. 10% favorability. 10% favorability. It's just 10% earned. Only maintenance was the answer. Trying to ignore Reynold, I concentrated again outside the window, but he wouldn't leave me alone. What are you going to do sitting there like a rock? I'll just watch the fireworks and go right away, so don't worry. Sad, I can't see the smoke filled from here. He giggled and said nonsense. It's the last day of the festival, so everyone else left early, and the slave boy you dragged will still be hit and run. What? My mind went blank, as if I had heard something I couldn't hear. I slowly turned my head towards him. What does that mean? Surely he'd stay alone, training himself and die. Reynald grinned and replied deftly. I was speechless for a long time. I stammered and barely asked, Why on earth? Because I had him do it. You crazy bastard. Tutuk, tutuk. I heard Eclipse's favorability dropping vertically. What nonsense is going on? Well, I didn't care. No, 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 no. I jumped out of my seat to check his favorability right away, and I was about to leave the attic in a hurry. Tuck, are you going to see him? He caught my wrist roughly. Lovely pink hair fluttered before my eyes. Before I knew it, Reynold, who had risen like lightning, was holding me. I frowned at my nervousness. Let go of me. It's late. He's been watched by me the moment you brought him in. Huh, Reynold said playfully, winking his eyes. My eyes were stunned. With a deep sigh, I forced out his hand and recited nervously, Why are people so childish? Be kind. It's creepy to hear such a thing coming out of your mouth, man. He rubbed his arm too hard. I glanced sideways at favorability 10% above his head. What did he eat wrong today? Today's luncheon, which only I couldn't eat, was excellent. In other words, there is no reason for him to act like a man who is so impatient after having a meal. Of course, he did that every time I ran into him, but today he was unusually serious. If you don't like me here, just say yes. Speechless, I'll give you a space. I finally sighed and decided to step down. I was the only one to suffer more. It was best to avoid it. So tell me to get out of here quickly. I'll get myself out of here. I was quietly waiting for his answer. Don't you have a conscience? A man who stared at me suddenly uttered no nonsense. What? How dare you crawl in here? Huh. I couldn't help but laugh. You look like a grumpy daughter-in-law who doesn't like it. I didn't mean to laugh at Reynald. However, I could see a spark in his eyes, but in his blue eyes that heard my laughter. I quickly lowered my eyes and answered back obediently. What do you mean by that? You've been doing things you haven't been doing lately, and you've been stuck in your room, so I was wondering if you'd finally come to your senses. I'm crazy, speechless. I think this shameless little bitch has changed a little bit. I swallowed a sigh that leaked out into the temple. I don't know why I'm here to get rid of my anger. I, who used up all my anger during the conversation with the butler earlier, honestly felt tired and burdened by the situation. Along with the crown prince, Ranald was a time bomb that should not be touched as much as possible. I sweetened him with a tired voice. Ranald, don't spin around and say anything you want to say. Do it right away. Why are you doing this all of a sudden? You were going to make a wish here again, seeing if it was fireworks or shit, right? But before my words were finished, he stole them. I hope Yvonne never comes back to this house again. No? Speechless. I wish she could disappear or die forever. Speechless. The wish you had made here 6 years ago, knowing that you had lost Yvonne on the last day of the festival. L- Ranald's face before his nose was reddened by the glow of the sunset that leaked through the window. He was laughing furiously. The eyes were livable. Penelope did that. I had no choice but to stare at him in surprise. I didn't know that I lost female lead at the festival. Come to think of it carefully, it seems to have come out as if it were in the game's prologue. But it was not particularly memorable because it had nothing to do with the story's progress. You became a princess overnight in the common people, so you might wish that the real princess would not return. Anyway, I was convinced of her behavior because I was in the position of Penelope. In fact, it may have been easier to understand because she has already experienced the situation of becoming a daughter of a rich family overnight. However, female lead second brother, Reynold, seemed to hate the fact that she climbed up to the attic again and again, which she had done in the past. How do you feel? As you wish, you've been in Yvonne's position for 6 years. Reynolds' momentum was terrifying enough to believe that the dead ending flag had blossomed. I looked at him staring at me, as if he were going to kill me, and picked out what to say. What's there to say without messing with that dirty temperament? On a miserable day when she lost her only brother, she even encountered a wicked woman who was taking her place. If you behave like the original Penelope, you'll be in big trouble. I started by rolling my eyes reflexively to see if there was anything around that would kill me. There was no sharp object in the attic, but it was useless to fight such a thing. If Ronald excited pushes me out of the window or chokes me, I'll die. I was very young back then. Once I fell from the window, I opened my mouth with difficulty. I'm sorry. I apologize now. I've been reflecting on myself a lot, so please forgive me. Self-reflection, huh? But Ronald didn't let go of his anger at the apology that I had chosen for my pains. Okay, it's all in the past, so let's ask. Speechless, why did you do that? Even if Yvonne came back, I wouldn't have kicked you out right away. It was the most difficult situation I've ever faced him. Even a mild apology doesn't work. What should I say now? I was running out of words because I didn't even do it. I was sweating profusely. Answer me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come up here, but I wasn't thinking straight. Is it easy for you to say sorry? Reynold, my father didn't tell me how he changed toward you. Tell me how to seduce a duke at that young age. I'll learn to. The situation was getting out of hand. His likability gauge began to glow dangerously. Reynolds' eyes glared at me. It was not clear whether it was because of the sunset pouring out the window or whether he was bloodshot with so much anger. It was unfair, and my mood gradually subsided, but I tried to judge coolly. This situation was dangerous enough and should have been avoided quickly if it could not be defeated. I slowly opened my mouth. I'm so sorry. I did that when I was immature. I sincerely apologize, but losing your sister has nothing to do with me. Speechless, I came here today because the butler asked me to watch the fireworks show here. Just I heard my father gave me permission, so I've been here for a long time, and I'm going back soon. You're noisy. End of chapter 43. Chapter 44. Reynolds suddenly rubbed his fingers through his ears as if he were bored. You were brought here as a substitute of Yvonne. I thought you'd be good at mimicking. I prayed with all my heart. You've made a rumor about crossbow chimpanzee, and you brought in a slave boy. You don't know his origin of, and you've already lost your reputation. It was always the back of prudence and disregard. I don't know how long you're going to make a chisel in this mansion. Someone's face overlapped with Reynolds' face, which he scoffed at by twisting the corners of his mouth. Why do I have to come all the way here and see the beggar walking around? An auditory voice rang out in my ears. I've never said I didn't want to see anything like that. I'm afraid I'll be kicked out. A substitute? But why did it make me think of what happened earlier? That I managed to calm down. Have you ever treated me as substitute? My mouth chattered. My mouth chattered on its own, as if the crossbow shooting chimpanzee had become my switch. Ranald, who didn't even listen, growled straight at my question. Then you don't even know the root of it. I picked you up and made you a princess. How much better do I have to treat you? Or should I treat you like a queen? Yes, be nice to me at least once. What? You know what? If I feel good, I'll give you a copy of your missing sister. I clenched my teeth, sarcastic, and laughed with a messy face. On the other hand, the sarcastic corners of Reynolds' mouth slowly went down. I felt the temperature in the room getting colder every minute. If it was just such a quarrel a little while ago, the present day, Reynolds was ferocious enough to tear me apart and kill me right away. Hey, he called me in a subdued voice, and favorability, negative 2%. Something that I was worried about happened. Be careful of what you say. Don't be so rude. How dare you? Why? Because on topic. Because we're on this on topic. Just better to speak up. You think you're the only one who hates me, right? 12-year-old Penelope was pictured in front of my eyes. I knew I couldn't do this anymore, but I couldn't stop myself. So am I. If I had known I'd starve with the great Duke, I should never have come, no matter how much you asked me to come with you. Penelope echoed. How did I seduce him? It's nothing. Just like you said to me. It's just a bunch of crap. Stop right there. Reynald warned grimly. Favorability, negative -1%, -1%. The favorability has fallen again. He looked angry, but inwardly embarrassed. It's always been their privilege to look scornfully at and sarcasm. Penelope would be surprised to see him like this because when he got angry, he rushed in with a groan. Perhaps I was surprised by the sudden change in my apology for not going against my feelings as much as I could. Either way, I felt sick and tired of it. I've been starving for days and days without my mother's funeral because I don't have any money. And one day, your father called me a daughter and said to go with him, speechless. Have you ever tried the rainwater falling next to a decaying corpse? The 12-year-old Penelope painted before my eyes gradually turned into a 14-year-old myself. What about the leftovers of someone's? Have you ever mixed up what you put together to buy food that tastes like trash? You've never had one, have you? You. Why did I wish your sister would never come back? Favorability, negative 1%. Favorite, 4%. Reynolds' favorability dropped in an instantaneously. If I didn't want to die, I had to shut up immediately and at least boil his knees. I'm afraid I'll go back to that time. But instead of praying that I was wrong, I chose to reveal the fear and desperation that I hid desperately, because Penelope would have done that at that time, and I would have prayed to God that the real princess wouldn't come back. I'm afraid I'm going to go back to my life, looking on the streets all day, begging someone to drop some food. Penelope, say it, I'm listening. Reynolds called me in a stifling voice. My still cry is over. I faced him, breathing heavily. The fear that favorability would fall and die has disappeared. Even if I die right away, I won't regret it. For Penelope, who grew up in lost anger and disgust, and I'm. It was just a moment of silence and quietly waiting for the end of to come. His head flashed like a flash. 7% likability. I thought you were. Reynolds was speechless with a stiff, frozen face. He deserved it. It's a story of those low-down lives that he's never heard of before. After a long pause, he managed to broach a word. I didn't know you had such a hard time. In an instant, things turned around. I felt indescribable when I saw Reynolds puzzled, who had no idea what to do, just like me who was sweating and choosing what to say. You must haven't known. You must haven't known. Penelope, you think that you've always thought I was, in fact, so clever that I twisted the Duke of Eckert and took your sister's place. If so, I hope you know now. I stared at him with cold eyes, and I felt a prick of my brain. When you accused me of being a necklace thief, I was a 12-year-old commoner who couldn't even write properly. Reynolds' mouth, which was open to answer something, Reynolds' mouth was, which was open to answer something, was as sweet as a lie. I could see the blue pupil slowly being colored by shock, but none of it was refreshing. It was then. Piyu, Wiyung, Ipyong. Beyond Reynolds' back, a loud roar rang through the sky out of the open window. During the meaningless war of attrition with him, darkness lay outside, even with the sunset. Piyu, Wu, Piyung, Yung. Fireworks have begun, leaving behind the beautiful sight of the colorful fireworks embroidered in the black sky. We both looked at each other silently. Every time the firecracker exploded, the colorful shadow of light shone on Reynolds' face and repeated that it would disappear. Maybe that's why his expression standing at me, I thought, seemed a little bit nervous. At that moment, the top of the pink hair glistened once again. 14% likability. The favorability has risen sharply. It was almost at the same time that a white window appeared before my eyes. System. Festival view. Quest success with Reynold. System. Would you like to receive a reward for request? Yes or no? Ha. I smiled disheartened at the quest window, which suddenly appeared in a situation that should not have appeared. Whether or not the favorability is broken, will you succeed if you meet the requirements of the quest? But in the end, yes, the situation which had to press yes made me shudder. System reward. Favorite plus 3%, and crossbow of Leonard has received. Looking at the sensitivity of rising straight away, I felt the steam ahead just subsided like a dying embers. Poof, piyo, foom. And like me, a brilliant fireworks display was still in full swing outside the window. Even if I get kicked out of this house, I'm just going back to being a poor commoner. It's weird. I muttered to myself through the loud firecrackers. You always make me miserable like a beggar, worse than a slave. Reynolds' wobbly face was completely distorted by my voice. Perhaps it was from this point on what I began to imagine after I left the dukedom. I looked at him for a moment with my burning eyes like ashes and turned around. Penelope. Ronald called me and tried to catch me with an urgent gesture, but I left the attic without even pretending to look back. Coming down the dark stone steps alone, I alternated with Reynolds' likes and impulsive non-talking conversation. Favorite, 17%. It was a really generous result for a person determined to die. Of course, the past of Penelope I poured out was all a great lie. I don't know her past that didn't even come out of the game. He said he ate rainwater next to the dead body, and that he ate leftovers and leftovers. All those nasty, nasty stories. He must have been like this. It's just an assumption I want to make, not my story. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Other rewards earned by completing the Reynolds and the festival quest were paid shortly after that. End of chapter 44. Chapter 45. The next morning I had breakfast that Emily had brought me from the table in near to the window. How does it taste, lady? Emily asked me gently, looking at me. The quality of the meal had improved significantly. Unlike before, it was like the aftermath of yesterday's work. The chef woke up early this morning and cooked himself. It sounds like my breakfast so far is not made by the chef himself. Speechless, Emily immediately shut her mouth and took a breath at my peak point. I'm not trying to blame you, so relax. I put down my fork for a moment and looked at Emily. Been I know you've been trying to so hard for me. Oh lady, I'm going to hug my man for sure. Don't worry, as much as you've tried, the rewards will follow soon. Emily burst into tears at my words with a bucket full of emotion. Boo, I've never asked for compensation. Took from now on, you're going to act modestly. It was just after breakfast, soothing Emily. The butler came to visit. My lady, did you call me? Standing in front of the door, he bowed politely. I nodded roughly. Come in. Excuse me. The butler came before me carefully. Thank you for the Thank you for the attic. I'm just going to say thank you. I'm glad you did. I smiled at the old butler's face, which seemed tense. Then his face brightened up. Did you enjoy the fireworks? It certainly starts earlier than the last festivals. Yeah, well, I didn't even get a look at the fireworks because of fighting with Reynold, but I couldn't bear to tell the truth with a look of anticipation. The Duke has ordered you to open the door whenever you want to climb the attic. Really? That's good news. Of course, I don't think I'll ever climb there again. And I answered without a soul. Then the butler went further and delivered a shocking sound. And Master Derek also makes sure that you can have a luncheon together whenever you want. That's enough. I called you today because I had a question to ask. I hurried to block his words. It was also something that would never happen again and again. What do you? The butler looked puzzled. I asked what had been bothering me since I had cleaned up Reynolds yesterday. How's Eclise doing? I think I asked the butler the other day. If it's Eclise, you mean the slave you bought? Slavery. The natural flowing title hardened my face. You don't call him that in front of anyone else so far, do you? Oh no, I made a mistake for a moment. I'm sorry, miss. The butler shook his head hurriedly at the cold voice. Yesterday I, well aware of what he cared about me in many ways, decided to be generous in a minor slip of the tongue. Where is Eckley staying now? He's staying at the apprentices' quarters next to the Secretary of the State, who was teacher assigned to him. The apprentices who enter the family's nights are assigned teachers to serve as the seeds. Based on what happened yesterday, I guessed that the teacher of Eccles would be Reynold, but I was dumbfounded by the words returned of the butler. He cannot have a teacher, miss. What? Why? Isn't he a slave? The butler just opened his mouth after a little bit cold, as if he had thought of my reaction. Since the lady insisted strongly that he would become your escort, the little duke made him as an apprentice to the family, but it meant that it was more difficult than impossible. Huh, I felt empty and leaned my back weakly on the chair. There was nothing wrong with what the butler said. I paid the price and bought Eclise from the slave market, not from the order. How can I dismiss his slavery? My question made the butler look perplexed. There's a way to buy a new identity or to be recognized for its brilliant work, but neither will be easy. He's from a defeated country. I was at a loss for words due to the remarkable identification gap I felt. How did Eccles become an official knight in the game? I mused up the contents of the game. Eccles got to the position of the swordmaster with a blooded effort, but he had to hide it and stop at the escort of a fake princess because of his origin, but after the appearances of the female lead, she becomes increasingly disliked by Penelope, who bullies her, and he is freed from slavery in recognition of his contribution to stopping a wicked woman who was trying to kill a woman in her bed and finding evidence of it. It was the highlight scene of Eccles' Ruth, when the two made a vow of loyalty to the female lead at their own inauguration ceremony, and then the female lead handed him the ancient sword. After killing the villain, he reveals that he is the swordmaster with the full support of the Duke and proudly honors his knighthood from the Emperor. Thinking of Eclipse's success story, I suddenly frowned. Then when did he become the swordmaster? Originally it was the Duke who brought him. It was bought at a slave auction because it was noted that his swordsmanship was outstanding. So even though Eclipse was very good, he could not have reached the level of swordmaster alone. Then the Duke, who knew his potential in advance, trained him as hard as he could. Thinking that far, I suddenly opened my mouth to a creepy family. Then I'm in a big trouble. She brought him here to use him as a escort and left him alone without knowing if he had a teacher or not. And she's the one who made the crazy guy got bullied. Crazy, my God. I was overwhelmed with astonishment. If I were Eccles, I would have made dozens of promises to kill myself. Oh, miss, the butler suddenly looked at me as if I was strange, blushing. Butler, I pressed down on my trembling stomach and asked, how does the butler see Eccles these days? In what way? In many ways. How is he training, adjusting well among apprentices? How do you feel? To my question, the butler answered as if he were pondering. He hasn't changed much, so I don't know how he feels, but he seemed to be doing well. Really? Well, it would be much easier to get by than the cramped cage that holds the slaves, and he'd be very grateful to you. I was visibly relieved by the butler's answer. He said the right thing for the first time in a long time. I have seen with my own eyes the iron bars that kept slaves in captivity as if they were keeping animals in the auction house. Yeah, it's much better here than the auction house. I nodded by my happiness circuit was that far. Of course, there are some complaints or suggestions from other apprentices. What complaints? Listen to me, miss. When he was first assigned to the quarters, there was a friction with the slave about not sharing the room. What? I screamed at the butler's subsequent words. But that's inevitable, considering his origins. The other apprentices have been removed from the family of the household gods. The butler calmly explained the reason, but I could not hear a thing. The people shook like an earthquake. Damn it, I've been busy in my own way and never imagined it was happening to Eccles. If this continues, I will die in his first hand. I will die in his hand first. I quickly ordered the butler. Please get ready to go out right now. Yeah? What kind of outing are you talking about? Shopping. Oh, the butler, who was embarrassed by the sudden remark, made a dazed sound. It must have been a very solemn tone. Yes, lady. The butler hurried out of the room with a bow. Being fast and quick was one thing I liked from him. I also called Emily urgently to get ready to go out. What's the matter, miss? Call the maids and make as much effort as you can. Yes, quickly. Yes, yes. Emily was also embarrassed by my out of the blue and hurried to pick up the skillful maids. I had to break away image an owner who neglected her people. Left alone in the room again, I looked into the air with blazing eyes and muttered in a dreary voice, "Today's operation is someone's got my baby down." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You're so beautiful, miss. You look like a goddess who just came down from the way you dress up. The maids made a fuss again, this time, as expected, whether they could not dislike the beautiful face decorated, even if they hated the princess. This time, I asked, exhausted, for giving up everything the swings did without stopping. Are you done? No, I haven't touched your hair yet. Have a little more seat, miss. I was forced to sit down by Emily's shoulder, and it was a long time before I could get out of the torture. How is it, miss? Looking at me standing in front of the full body mirror, the maids looked very excited. I looked closely at my reflection in the mirror. When asked what concept I wanted, I asked them to do enough to make a stone go away, and they faithfully fulfilled my words. A style of half braid with light makeup and finely braided sides. Ruby earrings and necklaces that are the same color as crimson hair, wearing a white dress with gold threads tightly carved on my shoulders and chest. I was really pretty, like a doll God had put his soul into. It was embarrassing to say this with my own mouth, so I laughed. There was an exclamation from the maid's side. The cold expression of the woman disappeared from nowhere when the smile came on my face. And the new image of a charming woman appeared. I like it. The one word was nothing, and the tearful girls burst out laughing again. Once again, I turned to Emily and said, "Good work, Emily. But where the hell are you going, lady?" Emily whined. "Take me with a sad face." I told him my destination with a fresh face. Military field. Let's go try to cheer him up. End of chapter 45.